Well, welcome everybody to the Unready Room. I'm Dan Gunther. With me, as always, the wonderful, the amazing, who was just telling me all about Baldur's Gate 3, Brandi Jackola. Brandi, how's it going?
Hello. It's good. It's good. It's good. How are you, Dan?
I'm good. I'm good. I think I'm in the right time period. I looked around and there's moving boxes and stuff sitting all over the basement, but that's been the case for like the last 6, 7 years. So
Mm,
I think this is the same. It's hard to tell.
yeah. I had a heated conversation with myself just an hour ago, but I'm fine now.
Mhm. I I almost went against the ethos of the Unready Room, and I was like, there's lots of camera footage of what this display behind me looked like 3 or 4 years ago. Like, I wonder, maybe I'll rearrange it all. Nobody ever pays enough attention to, like, notice this, but,
Oh,
like,
I
maybe
would.
I'll rearrange it all and to wait the way it was, and then I was like, "No, no, no, that's too much work. I'm not gonna do that."
Yeah. No, no.
I thought that would have been kind of fun though, but
Oh, absolutely.
well, yeah, so that's what we're talking about today is Star Trek Discovery Season 5, Episode 4, Face the Strange, which is a really wild, time-twisting, crazy episode that we'll get into our thoughts on it, but I think it's a take on Voyager's Shattered, but better, in my opinion, for a
Mm.
number of reasons. So anyway, so welcome to everybody. I'm seeing regulars in the comments already. Thank you all so much for joining us. And of course, thank you to everybody who's watching later. We really appreciate you as well. Make sure to leave a comment what your thoughts on this episode were and that sort of thing as well. So yeah. Um let's get going. So first of all, Face the Strange. We get a little bit of a Bowie reference there. That's pretty fun.
Well, they do love their Bowie over on Star Trek
Mhm.
Discovery.
They do. And it's fitting, right? Changes, right? Like we're seeing in this episode the changes that Discovery has gone through over the years and that these characters have gone through over the years. So I think that's appropriate. I really like that.
Me too.
Mhm. Well, let's start at the start of the episode. We get this, I guess it's kind of a flashback to Maul and Locke purchasing this time bug, purchasing, uh, killing the seller and taking it, I guess, is kind of more accurate. This Krenim chronophage, which was an interesting reference,
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to attack Discovery with.
No, where have we heard something similar to that before?
Hmm.
Mm,
Interesting. I
mm,
love that because Discovery is in the 32nd century, like, uh, you know, stuff in Prodigy, for example, they had some Delta Quadrant stuff show up and you're like, where are they? What's going on? Like they start in the Delta Quadrant, but they seem to have Alpha Quadrant stuff going on. And it lent a little bit of like, oh, okay, how did that happen? But because we're so far in the future here, they can pull anything from Star Trek history. And yeah, they've got star maps with Talax on it. So they've,
mhm.
they've been everywhere.
Yep, they have been everywhere, and say it kind of connects to that Voyager episode, and of course, where did we learn about the Krenim? Oh, Voyager.
Hmm. Yep, absolutely. Um, Another kind of weird time twisting adventure first introduced them in the Kess episode Before and After. So, yeah, okay. I'm going to say this right at the top just so I don't forget to mention it. Like, I mentioned how this episode reminds me of Voyager episode Shattered. Just in general, though, this episode has a very Voyager feel to it. Like, I feel like, I don't know, like this would have a Janeway approved sticker on the episode because it just feels very Voyager-y. And I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, even though Voyager is probably my least favorite Star Trek, but it's still Star Trek. It's still way up there. Don't worry. But Voyager did the kind of really weird stuff with ease sometimes, and this felt like that, where all the characters are like, "Oh, a chronometric field with the blah blah blah," and they rattle off a bunch of technobabble, and it makes sense, but maybe not so much to us, but to them, yeah, it makes total sense. It just felt very Voyagery.
Well, yeah, and that's again, like you said, it's the beauty of Discovery being in the 32nd century, is they have all the references. They can
Mhm.
connect anything to anything, and they do. They do connect
Absolutely.
a lot of things that you're just like, "What?" Especially something that we've been waiting years for a connection,
Mhm. Interesting. Yes.
which we'll talk about.
We will talk about that for sure. If I assume we're talking about the same thing.
Oh, we're talking about the same thing.
For sure. Also, and thank you, Patrick, for pointing this out. I saw you commented somewhere else this as well. Um, I did the like my review and Easter egg video. The issue with doing some of those Easter egg videos is because they're the screeners, you can't really confirm things or check things. You just kind of have to go with like, oh, I recognize that. I recognize that. I looked this up. Yeah, that looks like that. The weapons dealer, I knew he was something. I could not tell you what he was. Like I've seen that makeup before, but Patrick, yeah, Inari showed up a couple times in Star Trek Voyager, and that's the weapons dealer. So thank you for that, Patrick. I appreciate that. I wish I knew that in time for my video, but I couldn't figure out what he was and just had to go with it. So thank you.
Yeah, that's the downside of doing things from the screeners, especially since they have no subtitles, which really
Yeah.
Paramount Plus, would you get on that? There are hearing impaired people who would like to watch the screeners, who do podcasts and stuff and write articles. You can't bother to throw up some subtitles for them? Really?
Nah, I mean the screeners are already a huge thing. But yeah,
Yeah,
your
but
point is well taken for sure.
they need to be more inclusive in
Yeah,
that
I agree.
regard. They really need to be more inclusive.
For sure. And yeah, so the episodes that showed up in Nightingale and The Void, I think, yeah, they were the antagonist species in Nightingale that were after that ship. And then The Void, they were one of the groups that were stuck in the void with Voyager in both in season 7. So
Yeah, because
mhm.
Patrick, if you wanna know anything about Voyager, you just ask Patrick. He's gonna
Yes.
know the answer.
Absolutely. Okay. So, they've bought this chronophage. They flash forward back into what's going on right now. Um, Discovery has arrived at these coordinates in Zenkethi space, apparently, and there's nothing there. They can't find anything. Um, Rayner's kind of being his usual snappish person, and he's yeah, he's grating against people. I feel like officers showing initiative isn't a bad thing, but Rayner seems to think like, no, just keep your mouth shut and focus on your task and don't speculate about anything. It's,
Um, yeah, no.
yeah.
Collaboration is progress. You can't have one person always having the right idea,
Hmm.
because sometimes no one has the whole part. Sometimes you have to bring pieces together, and that's what collaboration is, and he has not gotten the memo yet, but he
Yeah.
will.
Yeah. So Burnham takes him aside and says, we need to have a talk. And they both beam to the ready room because
Why
this is
not?
can't walk. Got a beam. Um, so yeah, they're takes him aside and they have this great conversation. I really like the back and forth between them here. Uh, again, it's the and this is going to sound like I mean it in a bad way, and I don't, but it's the touchy feely way that Discovery does things, butting up against, the militaristic, pragmatic Rayner way of doing things. And it's fun to see, like, when, you know, they're having this discussion and Rayner's kind of like bristling against her, and Burnham just adopts like the empathetic, it's like, you're in a state of flux now, Rayner. And he just like, oh, for God's sake. I just kind of love that, where he's like, "Oh God, like give me a break," and just snaps at her, and then realizes like, "Oh, that was a bit far. I am so sorry." But I love that where like I've known people like that as soon as you get into kind of the like let's talk about our feelings and be empathetic, they're just like, "Ugh, I hate this." Rainer's clearly still in that mode a little bit.
Yeah. Well, here's the news flash. Everybody got feelings.
Mhm.
Everybody got
Exactly.
feelings. And acting like you don't have them or don't care about them is denying like half of your personality makeup, because
Mhm.
emotions are a part of pretty much all sentient living creatures. So it's really fun to see his chagrin when he realizes he's gone too far, and Michael's just staring at him like, "Mm?"
Mhm.
Just not saying anything. All she has to do is look at him, and he's like, "Oh."
Yeah, that was spare me the "I get you" BS. Oh, I should have, that was over the line. I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, they, you know, Burnham does put her foot down a little bit, which I appreciated, where she said, "This is my ship, and we're gonna do it my way." Raynor comes back with, "What if my way's better?" Which I was like, just dial that back a bit." Burnham doesn't react well to that, but they're interrupted with a Woshikun saying there's something going on, there's some sort of power disruption, and they go to beam back to the bridge, but they everything around them changes. They can't beam out, and we're off. This is the beginning of the timey-wimey stuff. So yeah. They find themselves back in time following this red figure through a wormhole. What's going on here?
Oh my.
Oh
Can't
crap.
imagine.
Mhm. So this is end of season 2. They're following Burnham, the Red Angel, through the wormhole to the 32nd century. And I have to like watching this the first time, I was like, "What?" I love this. This is
Yeah,
so great.
I was looking at it and I was like, "Okay, I gotta get my bearings here," because there was another scene in season 2 of Discovery where everybody was kinda, like, out cold on the floor, and that was actually one of Michael's future visions after touching the time crystal, and when she
Mhm.
was on, Enterprise.
Yeah.
And so, I'm like, "Is this that, or is it something else?" And then when he says the red figure in a wormhole, I'm like, "Ah, ha, 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 okay. I know
Mhm.
where we are." It's not a scene that we actually saw,
No,
but,
it's kind of an in between, I guess,
yeah,
during their time in the wormhole.
yeah,
Because I think we see in season 3 them all coming to on the bridge. So they
yeah.
all passed out at some point, kind of thing. And this is during that period. I wonder if Burnham passed out. That would be probably bad. Anyway, I can't remember if she wakes up in the tumbling through space or.
I think she kinda does.
Hmm. That
I
makes
think
sense.
I think she's just kinda, like, out of it, and then all of a sudden she's hurtling towards Book's ship.
Mm, yeah. Hit a flying woman in space. I remember that whole episode is great. Anyway, um, so yeah, there's some kind of weird time thing going on. They realize like, okay, we can't interact with people. We've got to be careful. What's causing this? Meanwhile, we kind of skipped over it, but we did see this little bug come to life in Adira's quarters, make its way to the bridge, and then the spore drive engineering, and it went into some panel which luckily Stamets saw. So one of 3 people who can actually affect this, what's going on, managed to see this happen. Thankfully, a lot of things had to go really right, really lucky for Discovery to get out of this. Not the least of which being the Rayner and Burnham were beaming at the time, which kept them separate from the changes. And Stamets just happens to have tardigrade DNA that has him live outside of space time, which we learned way back in season 1. This is a really
Rainer's
weird crew,
reaction
guys. It's a really weird crew.
when Rainer is like, "What now?"
It's like, never mind.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought actually when I realized it was gonna be a time thing. I'm like, "Well, thank God they have Stamets because he exists outside of time." So
Mhm.
and that may be why he noticed the time bug.
That could be too, yeah, I wonder if maybe it had some sort of,
Temporal
like,
signature that he could feel.
attuned to, or, like, that
Yeah,
made it maybe invisible to other people or something, or made it no below people's notice or something, and I don't know. Anyway,
yeah.
that would be a really quick, easy explanation to throw into the episode. That would have been you should be on the writing staff there, Brandy.
No. But thank you.
Um, but yeah, so they're going around the ship, and these time flashes happen at various intervals, and they find themselves in various locales, including when Discovery's under construction in the San Francisco fleet yards. And I mentioned this in my video, but like anything Starfleet related in the San Francisco area just has to have a killer view of that bridge from wherever they are.
People like the bridge, Dan.
Mhm.
People like the bridge. I like the bridge.
I'm just saying there's gotta be sides of things that face away from it from time to time. There's gotta be. Everybody's got a bridge facing office.
Mhm. Yep, everybody does, and if they don't have a bridge-facing office, they have a hologram window that shows the bridge.
That's true. That's true.
That's what I'm
Oh,
going with. Yeah.
yeah, visitors to, like, Starfleet headquarters get really turned around when they're in that building, so they're like, "Wait."
"Oh, is this one a hologram? Someone throw a pebble at it. Is this one a hologram or is this a window?"
Oh, man. I mean, I like it. It's Star Trek's shorthand for, "Hey, we're at Starfleet headquarters," or, you know, the academy or whatever. It's just the shorthand. "Oh, there's the bridge, San Francisco, cool."
Yep.
Uh, no. But, this poor guy, I gotta talk about Raynor and his, quick thinking there. And he's like, "Oh, I didn't know the inspection was today. Don't go to deck 7 right away." It's like, "No, we're gonna start at deck 7, you know." Um, what was it? Failure to prepare, prepare to fail. And then he's like, "I hate that saying."
It's just that was just like, "What?" Even I was
Calls
going,
him
"What?"
son. He's like this officious. I love
I
that.
yeah, it was just because I just thought, "That's not very Raynor," and then when he says he hates that saying, I'm like, "Yeah, that's Raynor now."
Yeah. That was cute, and again, we're getting just little peeling back of this character, and seeing more of him, and humanizing him a bit more. You know what I mean? He's not human, but uh, we're getting to know him a little bit better and relating to him. And I think his like rolling his eyes, and I hate that saying, just that speaks volumes. I feel like we're starting to get to know this guy.
Yep, he's finally gonna get his head out of wherever he had it crammed, I think, and actually be effective
Yeah.
instead of just surly.
Hmm. Absolutely. So Rayner is the one who recognizes what's going on eventually and says it's a time bug, this Krenim chronophage, and it's left over from the temporal wars. Which that's kind of cool. I like that we're seeing a bit of fallout from this, big unknown history of Star Trek that we've seen little bits of over the years. But the people in the 32nd century have this whole extra history that the Discovery crew don't have. And as much as this season is built on what we learned in TNG and the chase and all of that stuff, I love that we're seeing some elements from the in between times as well that is affecting what's going on. I always love to learn more about all of that.
I agree. I really like that. Honestly, though, I really would like to find out some things about the 32nd century before, Discovery's over. Like, oh, where the hell are the Klingons? How are they doing?
Hmm.
It's just things like that. Because we've been to Trill, we've talked about Beta Z, um, but
Yeah.
I would just like to know a little bit more about the races that we know about
Mhm. Yeah,
and how they're doing, if they're still around, you know?
absolutely. I think, so it's a blink and you miss it in season 3 at some point. There is like, you see a bit of a star map, I think, in Vance's
Yeah.
office, and there's an area of space, and it says Klingon something. So
Yeah, but I wanna know, what are they doing? Where
I
are they?
agree. They're around, but yeah, we've not seen them in this era. That's one thing that they're doing little bits of in this season that I'm appreciating. They're
Mm.
seeding little things. Like we got mention of the Tholians. We keep getting mentions of the Breen over and over and over again. And now in this episode, of course, when we flash to the future part, the outcome, if this all goes badly, it's the Breen that have apparently used this technology and unleashed destruction on Starfleet and stuff. So, or at least that's
Yeah.
the impression we're getting from what's going on there.
Yeah, it's interesting because we know so little about the Breen,
Mhm.
canon-wise, there's been stuff in books and whatnot, but canon-wise, we know very little about the Breen, and, I feel like if Maul and Locke are trying to get their hands on this technology in order to live free, um, why sell it? Just having it would mean nobody could touch them
Mhm.
because they would have the ultimate power of life and death.
Yeah.
So no one could touch them. They could go anywhere, do their own thing. So why sell it to the Breen? That's the thing that I quite don't get yet.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah,
I
I'm
guess
not
we'll
sure
see.
either.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah. I guess we'll see for sure. So speaking of this future time frame, um, there are definite similarities. It is not exactly what we saw in Calypso, but I have this theory that I actually thought of, and a lot of people thought of, to be fair, last season when there's this throwaway line where they talk about how Zora is evolving and she now has the ability to dream, and I was like, oh, I wonder if maybe they're setting up the idea that Calypso was a dream, because there's a number of things like sometimes we forget Calypso was made between seasons 1 and 2. Like, this is
Mhm.
very far removed from where Discovery is now. It's been completely refit, it looks completely different. If they wanted to make Calypso a thing that really does happen, there's ways they could do it. We've seen how quickly Discovery can get changed thanks to programmable matter and stuff, but I think it makes sense because in this episode we get a situation similar to that where, remember in Calypso she said the crew abandoned the ship. They're going to come back though. It's a little bit of hope. They left almost 1,000 years ago. I've been sitting here waiting for them ever since. In this one, she's been sitting there for close to 30 years, I think Rayner says. The crew all died. Um, she's got no reason for being really anymore. So, and she says when Rayner and Burnham first show up, I thought I was dreaming again.
Mm.
So I really think what they're saying there is Calypso at this point could very easily be explained as a dream that Zora has had in the 30 years that we see that she's existed in this alternate future here. So yeah, that's kind of my opinion there. I don't
Yeah.
know. It can be it's satisfying enough. It's not the most satisfying answer to me, but I'll take it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I feel like they kind of painted themselves a little bit into a corner with Calypso and how to connect it to everything else since all of
Mhm.
the other things connected to something else. And then there was just this outlier for years. And I feel like this is closure enough for me.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Like, this is what I can point to now to say, "Well, that works." Until something better comes along, this works. if
Mhm.
something better comes along. And if it never does, that's understandable, especially given that this is the final season. And with the exception of additions made to the final episode, they did not know it was the final season when they were making it. So I
Yeah.
think we're honestly kind of lucky to get this as an explanation, if nothing else. Anyway, the other thing I will note, which I've seen a couple people mention, but hasn't really been talked about a lot, the writer of this episode is Sean Cochran, who was a co-writer on Calypso with Michael Chabon. So he knows what's up. Like
Mhm.
he helped write that episode. So it makes sense. There's a lot of parallels here.
Yes, agree. So I will accept this because honestly, I never thought we were going to get a connection.
Mhm.
So, to actually get a connection, although it being a little bit more vague, I'm fine with that. I am
Mhm.
fine with that.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, Calypso itself, I don't know how recently you've watched it, but I rewatched it again fairly recently, and there's a definite dreamlike quality to it that,
mhm,
um, I think it really works.
I agree.
So, yeah, cool. So yeah, they see the stakes, right? They see what happens if they fail to get out of this time loop thing, and if they're unable to prevent the progenitor's tech from getting out of control, right? So not small c control, not big C control, because that actually shows up in this episode too. Weird.
Doesn't it? Doesn't
Hmm.
it though?
Anyway.
In fact, I knew it the moment they jumped into that particular time. I'm like, "Oh, I know what this battle is."
Hmm. Absolutely. Um, So yeah, like I love seeing all these different time periods. I think they did a really good job. It's great to see those old uniforms again and the old props. And also the set decorators did a great job of reverting everything to the way it looked and all of that stuff. Like the ready room looks distinctly different in each time period, right? I was waiting for the big wooden table during Pike's tenure and stuff, but we never quite get to there. We get it smashed up a bit in that time period with this battle with Control and going through the wormhole, but I wanted to see the horse stuff and all that, but that's okay.
Yeah, I get that. They had to cram a lot into this episode,
Yeah.
and they managed to make so many references in such a relatively short amount of time, make so many connections to remind us, which again, just, I'm a little way I'm about halfway through season 1 of Discovery again, so
Mhm.
I love having a job where I don't have a lot to do and I work from home a lot of the time.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's very good for rewatching stuff.
Mhm. So the one thing that I've seen being talked about online, and there's a little bit of disagreement among people, but rewatching it, I think I'm pretty clear on how the time looping stuff works. So whenever the time bug resets and shunts them off to a new time period, at that point, anything that happened gets saved, to put it in computer terms, I guess. Like it becomes an actual part of history. And it's only the last loop where they break the cycle before the time bug resets that all of the stuff that happened didn't actually happen in history. So um, that's why Ariam wouldn't remember what they told her about her future death. All these people don't remember Captain Burnham walking onto the bridge and talking to them and stuff. But all the other times, so for example, Jet Reno did really meet Rayner in the corridor during the fight with Osira's forces. And like Rayner and Burnham did sneak off the bridge in the turbolift just in time for Tilly not to see them during the trip through the wormhole and all of that stuff, which I think is kind of cool. Like, I think that's neat. Like, I want to see a re-edited Blu-ray release of Discovery where, like, first episode of season 3, just as Tilly's waking up, you see the turbolift doors close with two red uniformed people in the back or something, or like stick that scene in with Reno and Rayner in the middle of the Osira fight, and you're like, who's this guy?
What's with the uniform?
Yeah.
But, that's the thing, that a lot of ships have different uniforms, and so nobody really was that put off by the uniform, which
Mhm.
makes me laugh. They taken this thing that people would complain about, fans would complain about, and they turned it into a strength. So and I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. So, well, and Michael even says when she's on the bridge with Ariam and the rest of them that, if this goes right, no one's gonna remember this anyway.
Mhm.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
so I don't
So
know why that's a point of contention because I pretty much thought that that was,
I
the way you described it, that's what I figured was happening from the
yeah.
cues that I got in the episode.
I think if you're just watching it quickly, that end bit where they say, "Well, no one's gonna remember this anyway," I think some people were just kind of shorthanding that to like, "Oh, everything that happened in this episode, there no one's gonna remember any of it." But that's just specific to that loop. That wasn't the whole episode. I think that's where the confusion is. So not
Yeah.
a huge deal, but
Yeah.
um, it is something I paid more attention to the second time around because I was like, "Wait, how does that work?" So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, the season 1 time period, I think we need to I mean, okay, first of all, the first time I watched this, I was like, "Okay, they're not going to do a, Gabriel Lorca appearance," although that would be so cool.
Would
But
have
I
been
was
so
kind
good.
of hoping for maybe a, okay, 2 things. Either a, Commander Landry appearance, which would have been kind of neat. She's shown up a couple times in Mirror Universe stuff since then, not out of the realm of possibility. Or, um, the timing wasn't right on this because Landry would have already been dead and gone. But, if it was just a little bit further in the future, I thought an Ash Tyler appearance would have been really cool, but,
Mm. Mhm.
that's okay. Uh, we did get, Burnham as her past self, which, like, stick a pin in that because I wanna talk about her performance there.
Mhm.
Um, we did also get Bryce, whom we haven't seen since, like, the middle of last season. He left Discovery, but we get him back here. And of course, Ariam, Hannah Cheeseman as Ariam as well, who played her in season 2. She was played by Sarah Middich in season 1, but we've seen Sarah Middich since then as Nilsson. So Hannah Cheeseman back as Ariam was really cool. That was neat.
It was, and I didn't have a problem with that because obviously, for whatever reason that Sarah Middich couldn't continue playing the
Mhm.
role,
Yeah.
they weren't going to force her back into that makeup
No,
and whatnot. So
absolutely.
knowing that Ariam would be there, I figured it would be the Hannah Cheeseman Ariam, and
Mhm.
she did a fine job. That whole scene that made me that just oh my heart. There was crying
Yeah.
from me.
Yeah. I do have to admit the first time I saw it when Burnham started telling Ariam about her sacrifice, I'm like, "Okay, why are you doing this?" Like, I was kind of like with the rest of the crew, like, "No, no, 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 like, what are you doing?" But then, like, it makes total sense when Ariam is like, "No, that is exactly how I would react. That makes sense to me." I was like, "Okay, that's interesting. That's cool, appealing to her on that level." Um, and, the other thing I wanted to mention, speaking of character appearances, that was disappointing to me, um, first of all, going way back to the last episode, they say, like, this next, clue is in Zenkethi space, so it'll be up to the diplomats to help figure that out. I was like, "Oh, okay, so Saru is probably going to have some part in, you know, figuring this out. We're gonna see a little bit of that." But no, we don't get any Saru in this episode, which kind of makes sense given that they're separated and time traveling and doing all this weird stuff. But even in the past bits on Discovery, I thought like that would have been kind of a perfect place to have Saru. We do have his voice for one line over the comm, but just poor little selfish me over here just wants to see Doug Jones, and I didn't get to see Doug Jones, and it made me sad.
I know, I'm sorry.
Ah.
We all want to see Doug Jones all the time.
Mhm. So, yeah, that was a little bit. I was oh, I miss my Saru. That's all I'm saying, I just miss him. So I hope we get more Saru and Tarina diplomacy stuff at some point, because his
Fingers
his
crossed.
absence was felt in this episode.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And that's what worried me about season 4, the beginning of season 4 of Discovery, with Saru going back to
Mm. Kaminar, yeah.
Kaminar and being sort of an ambassador sort of thing there. And I'm just like, but what? And then my Saru, you cannot take him away. And
Yeah.
then they didn't. He ended
Yeah.
up back on
Until this season,
Discovery.
apparently.
Yeah, until this season, it's like, you need to get back to Saru, please. I need my
Yes.
Saru fix, and you need to give it to me. I need it. Please give
Mhm.
it to me.
Absolutely. Well, someone we did see though was season 1, like episode, like context is for kings slash the butcher's knife cares not for
Yeah.
the blah 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 blah.
The
Somewhere in
butcher's knife
there.
cares not for the lamb's cry. Yeah.
Yeah. We see Burnham, and Sonequa Martin Green just perfectly illustrates how freaking far this character has come. Um and I mean, yeah, there's some physical differences. She doesn't quite, she's a few years older, she's more mature. But they did a really good job, I think, trying to make her look like season 1 Burnham, and especially the acting just really comes through where, man, I'm just like, it makes me wanna go back and watch season 1 again, because I forgot just how, like, remember when we first see her in the shuttlecraft on the way
Mhm.
to prison, and just that look on her face, and she kind of has that look on her face for the next few episodes? I forgot about that, and like how beaten down she was by what had happened. It comes across so well here.
It really, really does, and that's because Sonequa Martin Green is a genius
Mhm,
and very good at what she does. And, you know, it's hard enough to get into a character, but to get into different facets of a character in the same episode and to have to switch back and forth between those things, that couldn't be easy, but she
mhm.
does it seamlessly. It's just anything where the 2 Michaels are together, it just blows my mind because it's so well done.
Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah, and that's exactly the point I was making. Like, that doesn't matter because I buy her as the younger Burnham in the scene,
Mhm.
because the acting is so good. Absolutely.
The attitude.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fun bit of playing against yourself a little bit. It's like, oh, things don't always work out for us, do they?
Mm,
Like, if anyone's gonna understand, it's you.
yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it should be easy, but it never goes easy for us.
That was it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Uh so yeah, they're pretty evenly matched in the fight, but I do like that, of course, Captain Burnham gained the upper hand, because I'm like, you have some experience on her. You're gonna know how to counter eventually. And she does, figures it out, neck pinches her, and then g- takes the time to give her a little speech about, how it's not going to always be like this. It's going to be a long road.
Getting from there to here.
There we go. Yep. I heard it. I heard it. I forgot to mention it in my video, but yep, I heard that, and
Yep.
I appreciated it. Um, I like that.
Yes, and that fight scene, okay, the fight scene,
Mhm,
unbelievable, unbelievable. The first time that I watched the episode, and Dan, you and I were talking about this before we went live,
mhm.
I didn't even think about that being somebody else fighting Sonequa.
Yeah.
It never once occurred to me, not once. That is how well that this was choreographed, how well it was filmed, how well it was acted, just unbelievable.
Mhm.
And when I watched it again the second time, really keeping an eye out for that, it still blew my mind. The other person in the scene, of course, was her stunt double, and they both had to learn both sides of the fight.
Yeah.
in order to film it properly, and just the care that it took, with the cinematographers coming to all the rehearsals to see what angles were going to be used with this fight, and the stunt people coordinating the choreography, and all these things, all these moving parts that went into this relatively short scene that was just seamless. You
Hmm.
believe every second that Michael is fighting Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. I was saying earlier, like we have come so far from a lot of those double episodes where, there's a double of one of the characters for whatever reason, and they're facing off against one another, and they usually do the over the shoulder back and forth, so they're not in the same shot. But every once in a while, they throw in a shot where they're facing each other, and the eye lines, don't quite match, or um, Will Riker is looking kind of here on Thomas Riker as he's dressing him down, and it just
Mm,
doesn't quite work. But man, how far we've come where this just looks like there's no seams, like you said. It's perfect. I absolutely buy these two are fighting uh, each other. They're the same. Yeah, it's
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and they had a lot of them both on the screen at the same time. That
Hmm.
was the kicker,
Yeah.
is how many times you see them both on the screen, not over somebody else's shoulder. It's just it
Hmm.
was I don't know if people can really appreciate just how much work that had to have taken to make it look that real.
Yeah.
It blew my mind.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we've got this technobabbly plan to okay, so the time bug, they couldn't access it because it's thrown up some defenses that like hyper age anything that goes near it. Um, and by hyper age, I mean like it turns to dust in seconds. Like it's not good. Um, the technobabble thing is they're going to be at maximum warp and then break the warp field, and the warp field is what protects you from relativity. So that's going to disrupt this thing, and it's still going to age, but not as fast. And um, they seem convinced of it, so I'm convinced of it. Okay, sure, that'll
Yeah,
work.
it's the only way to get through the little shield and just fry that little monster.
Yeah. So Raynor's going to be the one to do it. They're going to have to convince Arium to do this, which they do. Like Burnham is able to. That scene to me, like it's shortened, it's quick. I feel like the average Starfleet crew probably wouldn't buy it as quickly as they do, and they kind of have to because we're getting towards the end of the episode. But somebody mentioned this, and I can't stop thinking about it, and it's true. I remember in the TNG final episode, All Good Things, when Picard is jumping between the three time periods, and he has to convince like this new crew on their first day that basically by telling them he knows that one day they'll become the finest crew in the fleet, they're like, yeah, okay, let's go along with this and destroy ourselves. To like, I never quite bought that. I was like, that was too fast. Hints of that here where I'm like, I feel like I would have, if I was on the bridge, I would have needed a little bit more convincing. It's good that Ariam was convinced the way she was because she can just order everybody to, but I feel like if I was like Detmer or a Woshikun, I'd be like a little bit more like, okay, I'm not really buying this, but all right. Um, but it works in the context of it because we know these characters, but this is a mutineer who came on the ship 2 days ago. I'd be like, I don't think so.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though, you can clearly see that this is not the same Michael.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Just and that's so, of course, the first thing, that younger Michael thinks is that it's a shapeshifter of some kind, etcetera, and, I totally get that. But the way that I tend to look at it is we're judging this by our own pitiful 21st century opinions of how things would go. This is Starfleet. This is like the best of the best. and the kind of people that will pull together to get stuff done, even if they don't have all the information, because stuff
Mhm.
needs to get done. And so I kind of just figured, yeah, well, they're gonna give in, especially once they've got Arium. But I think once Arium accepted it, they were all just like, "Oh, okay, right. Yeah, let's do this."
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't bug me nearly as much as the All Good Things one
Yeah.
does
Y'all Good
because
Things is too short. It's just too short. Too
but
not
all
enough.
but all, what I was saying was it doesn't bug me as much as the All Good Things one does because they're not gonna like destroy the ship and sacrifice themselves like they are in All Good Things. It's just like, all right, we're gonna do this experiment, and I guess like what's the worst that's gonna happen? We drop out of warp. Okay.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what happens when you just pop the warp bubble and fall out of warp. If that's gonna cause some problems with inertial dampeners, I don't know.
According to Stamets, the inertial dampeners will be fine. So yeah,
That's
I feel
good.
like the stakes weren't as high. It was like the stakes were high for Burnham and Rayner and them, but the stakes for the Discovery crew, I buy them going along with it more because they're like, okay, what's this gonna hurt anyway?
Mm,
You know. So
yeah. Yeah, it's like, what's the worst that can happen?
nah. Also Tilly. Tilly's look in season one, like they got her hair and makeup and everything absolutely perfect.
So
And
good.
she just snaps right back into season 1 version of herself so well. Like,
Mhm.
I was telling Brandi before we started recording that it was like they filmed this in season 1 and kept it in their back pocket for when they could like, it was so good.
So good, and again, a testament to acting ability, Mary Wiseman, my queen. So, I just, anytime we saw past Tilly, excuse me, um, which was only that one other time with the turbolift. Uh, Again, still totally making me believe that that's past Tilly,
Mhm.
and just Mary is just so good at what she does, and she just sunk her teeth into this character and made her what she is, and made her this amazing role model for curvy girls, for one thing, and for smart
Mhm.
girls for another, for
Mhm.
redheads on top of that. And
Yeah.
just that thing of, yeah, guess what? You may not always feel like you can do it, but if you just and and oh, and that's one more thing about Tilly, is how she thinks, she gets to this point where she's in line, she's in the program to become a captain, and she realizes that isn't actually what she wants, and so
Mhm.
she changes her mind, and she finds what she wants to do. How many people have the bravery to do that?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
just she's an excellent role model, is all I'm
Yeah,
saying. Just had to get my Tilly gush up in there, so that sounded
absolutely.
wrong. But you know what I mean.
I gotcha, I
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, yeah.
The other, of course, emotional core of this episode is Rayner have learning how to connect with people and how to, get people to be their best and get them on side, not just ordering them, but like getting them to invest. And he does that with Burnham and Reese in engineering here in a really great scene. I did kind of love that, like, um, you love Constitution class ships. You think they're curvy, and he's like, I do. You're right, boy. I'm on board. Like, aw, that's
Yeah,
he's a real ship head, as he says, right? So,
yeah. But what he says to Michael, um, just
yeah.
wow. Just wow. I'm like, "Oh, you're finally getting it, buddy. You're finally getting it.
Mhm.
Good on you, 'cause I wasn't sure that it was going to happen." He could just be a dick through the whole season, but I really didn't think that was going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
No, I appreciated him learning that lesson and using it well here with Burnham. And um with Reese, it was a little bit of like, I have this little bit of trivia about you and I'm using it to get you on side. But with Burnham, it felt much more genuine and like making a real connection with her to communicate what her cooperation means and what would, yeah, something like that. I don't know, but it felt more real, and I really liked that.
Yeah. It was, this was an emotional roller coaster of an episode.
Speaking of emotional roller coaster, I got to bring this up because no, you are not the only person who liked that moment. Actually,
Loved it.
my one of the names I was considering for this episode was some variation of like red really suits you, or you look good in red, or whatever it was.
Mm.
Um yeah, he was definitely low key flirting, maybe not even low key flirting with her.
Definitely not low key. I think he was really into future Michael.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, red is really your color." Mm. His little
Reprodu
like flourishes.
reproduce asexually, so don't worry about that, you know?
Yeah,
You wanna take a tumble, you're not gonna get pregnant, it's fine.
that was really cute. Oh, um okay, let's also talk about Jet Reno and Stamets a bit, because I love that we get some old school banter back and forth between them. I'm like, Stamets, are you stuck in a time loop? What? No. What?
What?
Just-
What?
that whole thing was so awkward. I loved it.
He
Also,
doesn't
calling
he's
him
not
Mr. Truffles.
yeah, he's not good at lying really,
No.
which is not a bad quality, you know, being bad at lying is not a bad thing. But, yeah, just his face of, "What? No! What?"
I love that.
Oh, so good.
I've seen
Mr.
this opinion a lot on the internet. Like, she knows. She's just
Mhm.
letting it like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, she's too observant. So, after he's sitting there freaking out, she's like, "Oh, he's totally traveling through a time loop. Okay, well, I'm just gonna pretend like I don't know."
Oh, yeah, don't get lost in abstract theories. What did she say? Not a Klimt paint. I can't remember who she said, but
I can't remember
oh,
that
that was
either,
funny.
but yeah, so funny.
My wife, who's an artist and who has, of course, taken a lot of university art classes, like, I think she really appreciated that joke.
Yes, love it.
Mhm. And then, yeah, I guess the other time we see her, of course, is, as I mentioned before, when she meets Raynor in the corridor during the battle with Osiris forces. And I feel like that's got to come up again at some point. I
Mhm,
think yeah, they've got to refer to that at some point. But
indeed.
yeah. Okay. So what are we? Well, okay. So we've got the whole. They managed to defeat the thing. They flash back to the correct time. It turns out they've only lost 6 hours, and it appears that nothing significant has changed in the timeline. So we're good there. Um, and they have this warp signature they've found from Mullen Lock, and they need to figure out where it went. It seems to disappear into nothing, and that's where we're left heading into next week's episode, I guess. So, yeah. Anything we didn't cover that you want to mention in this episode before we give our final thoughts?
Well, I do like how when, Raynor kills the time bug, it actually injures him, and he's
Mm,
he's trying to be, like, stoic about it and stuff, and Burnham's like, "Just go see Culber, he'll fix you up."
yeah.
And he actually just is like, "Yeah, okay." Goes and gets his hand fixed. That's progress.
I like
That
that.
is
And then, yeah,
progress.
when he comes back on the bridge, she's like, "Hmm?"
Yep,
It's all good. I like that.
yeah,
Yeah. I did also like that line. It's like, how are we gonna explain this to the crew? I think we'll say time bug. They'll get it.
yeah. They'll know, they'll understand.
I like that.
Because this is not the first time that Michael's been in a time loop, but this is the first time she was aware that she was in a time loop without Stamets telling her.
Hmm. Yeah. This episode did make me want to go back and watch Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. Um, the first Stamets' first rodeo with this timey wimey stuff, I guess. So
Yep.
yeah. Final thoughts and ratings, and that goes, of course, for the fine folks in the comments as well.
Well, as far as being stuck in a time loop, I think this is my favorite representation of that trope so far in the history of Star Trek.
Hmm.
It was just really well paced, and it was interesting to see the 3 characters working together, even though Raynor was being a bit of a grump at first. I just enjoyed it. It made me laugh, made me cry, and I thought the visual effects were just extremely well done, as I have
Mhm.
already stated. And it was actually kind of fun to see Discovery in dry dock, even though we only see it from the ready room. So, it's like, oh yeah, there's the bridge. Hey, I've walked across that bridge. I did. I walked across that bridge in 1990, and
Hmm.
it was cold. It was a cold day, and you're walking across basically the ocean.
Yeah.
And also, I couldn't look up at anything because I have vertigo, and looking
Mm.
up at those big trussels, no. No, thank you. I just kept straight ahead. Just keep looking forward. Don't look up. Don't look down. Look forward. That is how I walked across the Golden Gate Bridge.
Mm.
That not that any of you needed to know that. So, for this episode, I loved it. I would watch it again. Of course, I'll watch all of them again. Um, I would give it 1, Tilly fearing that Michael's going to stab her in her sleep because she snores.
Mhm. And she's not, though. She's
She's
not.
not. She's not. No.
Okay. Um, Also, it was, Rothko paintings. Thank you, David.
Ah,
Yeah.
yes. Of course. Of course. Of course you would know.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. Like I mentioned earlier, shades of Voyager's Shattered in this one, which a lot of people really like that episode. I really had a lot of problems with that Voyager episode, not least of which, so Voyager is split into these different time zones, and Chakotay is walking around and like he crosses from into the other and finds himself at a different point in Voyager's history, and they never once acknowledge that like these are thousands of light years apart too. Like are those people from the past being brought there, or is he traveling to, like, how this episode actually acknowledges that there's a distance component involved as well, and it's the whole ship flashing between these different things, and probably just as unlikely or whatever, but it seemed to make more sense to me, and I like that they actually kind of acknowledge that a bit. Um, the episode itself, I thought, because it acknowledges some of those things, I'm not scratching my head wondering about them the whole time and not concentrating on the actual emotional core of the story, which is what they want you to concentrate on. So this episode works really well for me in that regard. I love seeing how far these characters have come. Michael, obviously, especially. One thing we didn't talk about too that I just remembered was Michael and Book, and I'm sure that's going to
Mm.
cause some fallout in the future, where she has flashed back to a point where they're, in the throes of a really healthy, good relationship, and she's remembering what that was and what she's lost and what they don't have now, and how awkward that was, but it's so well acted by her, where she um like she realizes how good it is, and you can kind of see her, like she's tense, and then like she just, wow, um I hope that comes back, because I think that should definitely have an impact on Michael going forward. So
I
um
agree completely.
mhm, yeah. So as far as a rating for this one goes, I'm gonna have to give it, oh, I didn't think this one through. I'm going to give it, this sounds bad, but it's not, but it's one Zora singing alone to herself, but overjoyed to see Michael and Raynor, and knowing that there's now a hope that all will be saved. That's what I'm giving this one.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
yeah. Yeah, I'm just making sure I get the last few ratings here as well. Very high marks for this one I'm seeing from everybody. Yes.
Ah, hell yes. Hell yes. Anytime they can get off David Ajala's shirt, please do that. Thank you. Give the ladies a little chocolate, if you don't mind.
You're here. Not just the ladies too, by the way.
Oh,
But,
okay, yes. Give anyone who finds men attractive some chocolate.
absolutely. Yeah, so on that note, thank you all so much for joining us. Now, I do have to say, next week I am away, so unfortunately, we will be postponing the Unready Room till the week after, where we'll do a double episode. Feel free to make plans next Saturday. Don't cancel anything on our account. We won't be here. So, but yeah, thank you all so much for joining us. This was so much fun. We will see you in a couple weeks for the next 2 episodes of Discovery. Until then, follow us here, hit subscribe if you haven't already, hit like on this, it helps us out. Yeah, join the Positively Trek discussion group on Facebook, and also listen to the Positively Trek podcast. It's a lot of fun, and we really like doing it. So thanks. Live long and prosper, and take care. And don't get caught in any time loops.